Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, whenever you're tuning in. Welcome back to another episode of Inside Marketing. And I'm very, very excited and delighted today to be joined by Kanyin Ilori, who is the head of marketing at Universal Quantum. Thanks so much, Kanyin, for joining us in the midst of a busy week. Really appreciate it. Lovely to have you here.
It is my absolute pleasure, and I look forward to having what I hope is a fantastic conversation with yourself. So, yeah, glad
Yeah,
to be here.
likewise. Likewise. Really excited to kind of get into your experience and hear what you have to say kind of on marketing in 2024. It's always so interesting the different people that we have on here, the different sectors that we get to delve into. So yeah, really, really excited for that today. And I suppose really to kick us all off, the best place and where I always like to start with these sessions is maybe if you could paint that picture for us a little bit, if you could take us through what your journey into marketing has been like so far, where you are now, where you started, anything in between, and how that shaped you as a marketer. That'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Kai, I would say that Kai, I've been really, really creative as a child.
Mm,
I was kind of always drawn to writing as well as like anything that is not too formed and too rigid. It didn't help that I had Nigerian parents that also said that you have to be like a lawyer, doctor, or something of that nature. But I think I sold the fact that I was still going to business school. Can like I think that maybe marketing was the right bridge between something very business focused that had that credibility for my parents versus something that still kind of allowed me to flex that
sure,
creative muscle as well. So that has always pulled me in, the very creative nature of that, and how that drives business. So I would say right outside of uni, I was very fortunate to have a very senior position for the National Health Service. But
uh-huh,
I quickly discovered that it probably wasn't sexy or future gazing enough for me, because
sure,
of the marketing environment that actually presents. So I joined a cybersecurity firm, and yeah, I have kind of always worked in tech or manufacturing engineering. Since then, I led large teams in like Airbus. Can I even moved to France for a few years as well, um, as well as working for very large scale defense high tech companies,
mm,
which I would say that my favorite to date is the one I'm at now, which is Universal Quantum, and it doesn't get more future gazing than creating quantum computers that is basically
yeah.
creating the future of the world as well. So yeah,
That's
exciting
fantastic. Would you be
times.
able to expand just a little bit about Universal Quantum and what you guys do, and then perhaps kind of how you tackle marketing that? Because I imagine, something so futuristic, that's a marketing challenge in itself. Yeah, it'd be great to know a bit more.
Yeah, sure. So, the very nature of what we do is in the description itself. We are looking to solve a big tech problem, which has still evaded the smartest of minds in that space, which is to create quantum computers that would have the raw horsepower and the churn to be able to solve some of the big problems out there, everything from optimizing agriculture,
Yep.
logistics, drug discovery, all that stuff, which is what we're trying to do. Can I would say the second part of what I'm about to say also ties into the marketing of it. It is the wild wild west in the sense that there are many routes to solving that problem,
Yeah.
because basically we are still trying to charge over that hill, right? Can the marketing in that space really does align with that as well, because it is such a young and forming sector,
Yeah.
which means that we are all still trying to figure it out. I think what really helps me in this space is my mentality towards marketing in the first place, which is that you should always seek inspiration outside of your sector. So I think
Interesting.
that outside of sector experience really helps, but I think that should be the rule across the board. Like anyway, you should always look beyond your sector to
Yeah.
see what you can bring in to kind of move things forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you think is that to avoid echo chamber? Is that to just avoid copycatting? Is that what how what do you think that gives you? And is that something you've always implemented right from the beginning of your career, or is that something you sort of picked up and learned?
Yeah, sure. I would say that the answer to that question is in one of the things that you do. One of the things that you did mention, there is a lot of copycats in those form, right? When you look
Yeah,
over the fence and you look at your closest competitors, maybe a good example would be when I was in like Airbus, we would always look at what Boeing is doing, and we would always look at what some of the high manufacturing companies are doing, and we would want to get
sure.
close to it or to copy it. My sensibility has always been kind of different. Like I've always looked to, like consumer goods. I've always looked across way beyond the fence to see what companies like Coca-Cola, like Apple. I love what a company like Innocent Smoothie was one of the companies that grabbed me for their
Yeah.
amazing marketing the first time I came to the UK when they had like a
Mm,
sweater on like a bottle.
yeah.
So like I think for me, right, I have always looked to see what the soul of what they're trying to achieve with that is and to see
Yeah.
how that can be applied in a reasonable way in a sector that is maybe not there yet, but like I think there are still parts of it you can take and bring into your own sector. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think that's such an essential lesson and actually something that can be a real pitfall and something that I see from speaking to, lots of marketers across many industries. We can get really stuck in a rut of what our industry is doing and just benchmarking ourselves against our competitors who are directly, very, very closely aligned with whatever strategies we've decided to go for. So
Yeah.
the scope for inspiration, the scope for creativity just kind of gets reduced and reduced and reduced. It's kind of stifling. So
Absolutely.
actually
Yeah.
being that breath of fresh air that's like, do you know what? We're just going to go and look at some completely different company, completely different objectives, completely different audience, and let's
Yeah.
see what we can bring back. I often think about it as almost it's like a fish tank, right? And you're trying to pour the fresh water in and keep
Exactly.
everything alive and healthy and kind of flowing through. And I think that's a marketing leader's job in a way, because I think it's very easy and very comfortable to sit in whatever sector we're in and just reverberate around, what we're sitting with. But actually, what we need to do is go elsewhere, take a trip. And go and see
Exactly.
what else is happening out there in the big universe. So that's really interesting that you hear to hear that you're doing that proactively. And is that something that you kind of notice that the people you work with almost like adopt as well, and that kind of becomes practice in your team to do that, kind of bring
Yeah,
ideas?
yeah, sure. Like I think that the longer you stay in like any sector, this is from my very, very limited experience anyway. Um, like I think there is that risk of becoming way too institutionalized to kind of
Mm,
think outside of like a certain box, which has always been something I have been really scared of. So, like, to your question, there are various answers to that. Let me start with universal quantum. Like I said, this is a very young sector, right?
yeah,
We have like our COOs as well as most of the engineers that I work with. They are mainly doctors and they come from a very academic background as well, which means that they are not weighed down by the sector thinking or the very business like thinking, but they also come with their biases as well, right? They
yeah,
come with their own rigidity in the way they want to do things. So, not so much for UQ. We do have a very cool way of doing things here where we are very very scrappy and we bring people that we actually defer to because we fully trust them. So a good case in point is that we just did a full rebrand here, and I literally had a blank slate to fully revise
Wow.
the whole front facing facade of the business as well as the messaging. But there was really no there were really no big boulders rolling down my way as you might
Yeah,
imagine if I was doing that for some of the businesses that I've mentioned that guy have worked for. So I would say that that is very much sector defined. There are businesses that guy have been in where the brand is has been around for way longer than I've been alive,
yeah,
and kind of I mean there are so many checks and balances in place where it's really hard to make too many big muscle movements without too much in your way. That's not the
sure.
case here. That's not the thinking here,
Yeah,
because it does feel like the wild wild west in quantum.
yeah. That's so interesting and a great way to describe it. It's exactly how I visualize it as well. Sort of like you are a little bit the lone ranger out there trying to pick a direction for everybody else. And I guess both of the kind of scenarios there that you raise are challenging in themselves. And I guess a lot of marketers will relate to that. It's either it always seems to be one end of the spectrum. It's either that complete blank slate, no kind of inclination as to maybe where might be best to start. So it's really up to you and your creativity and your collected experience as a team to make a choice. Or you've got the other side where you've got maybe too much data. You know, you've got years of a brand's existence, you've got so much to go off. And then that's also really difficult because you're a bit penned in, so it's tough. I wonder how
Exactly.
you mentioned there starting with a blank slate on the branding project. I mean, I think to a lot of listeners that would sound really appealing and a really exciting project to be involved with. But I imagine it had its challenges. I don't know if you're able to share that. If not, no worries.
Yeah, sure, right. I mean, maybe the wrong phrasing was blank slate. So we did have a brand, but this is a company that has only been around for 5 years. So we had something very rudimentary, not very polished. It was
Yeah.
just a bunch of techies just knocking something together, right? Just to get them going, right? I am the first head of marketing here, so the
Hmm.
first proper marketing hire. We had a comms person in place before. So I would say that it did feel like a blank canvas because it was almost like, hey, you could rip up the sheet and you could do whatever you feel is right within reason. Kind of I was met
Mm.
with I was met with great collaboration from the two founders as well, which is something I was very, very cognizant of as a risk because it is usually harder when you work with founders on a rebrand project,
Yeah.
which is something I've also done in the past because they're too close to it, right? And they're
Yeah.
maybe intermingled a lot of their own ideas and a lot of their own personality into the fiber
Mm.
of the place
Mm.
well beyond marketing itself. But luckily for me, that wasn't such a challenge here, which is why they were not too many things to flag there. I think that maybe what was the biggest challenge was the fact that I don't have an internal team here. As
Yeah.
of yet, we're quite light on ground. So it was a case of totally outsourcing everything else.
I see.
Kind of that was quite a bit to manage, but yeah, that is also a new way of working that
Mm.
I'm getting used to as well.
Yeah.
There is always more than one route.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How interesting and really amazing to hear about that relationship between you and the founders and kind of how that collaboration worked. And fantastic when you can have that sense of healthy detachment. Because I think on a episode earlier this week, I was speaking about exactly this, that, you know, we believe that our kind of alliance to the brand, and
Mm.
how much we love the brand and believe in the brand is really beneficial. But actually, it can be really dangerous because it pushes
Yeah.
us so far away from the position that our prospects find themselves in.
Yeah.
And so before we know it, we're creating this sort of passion project brand, which we love, but actually it doesn't matter whether we love it when we're not the brain of the consumer. So yeah,
Exactly.
that is a difficult challenge. And yeah, outsourcing, yeah, project managing all of that, it is a challenge. It's time intensive, and obviously keeping everybody on track and everything. But hey, it's nice sometimes, isn't it, to have that inflation of the team when you're used to being a little bit more thin on the ground, and then to have more faces and more ideas thrown around and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like a really exciting project. Yeah, and congrats on it.
It was indeed. Thank you very, very much. And like I think the biggest takeaway for me, or should I say the
Mm,
part that did bring me the most joy, is kind of like, right, when you also get to take the whole company on a journey as to you actually showing them what marketing can
yeah,
do, right?
yeah.
That has been that has been fantastic
Mm,
when you get to really educate the workforce and you really show and prove in a very, very tangible way.
yeah,
So like, this is a new like assignment for me as well, in the sense that some of the places I have been before, they are a lot more marketing matured. So like, this is a new assignment that brings its own new set of joys as well, that I'm really starting to bask in and really like enjoy. So yeah,
yeah.
it's fun times indeed.
How interesting. What an interesting kind of like experience that you're having there in terms of almost establishing that seat at the table for marketing. I mean, it's already
Exactly.
there, you're already there, but coming from, companies where that's for many, many years been, real key pillar of
Mm.
everything. And then looking to educate and evolve the standing of marketing in a company
Yeah.
that's growing fast. Very exciting place to be. So yeah, and I think it's an interesting point you raise about the team's involvement in marketing as well, because I think
Mm.
so often they get kind of brought in for a quick insight at some point in the timeline of a project, or they get a little glimpse from afar at one aspect of what marketing does, but they never really see the full picture, and that can be difficult for us to get the buy-in, or to prove what we're actually trying to achieve. So a lovely
Yeah.
opportunity there to take them along, and I'm sure that that's paid off.
Yeah.
So yeah, ultimately they're the brand ambassadors, aren't they? So the
Exactly.
more
Yeah.
that they are in on the why of the branding and what we're trying to represent, the more that they can then go and perpetuate that. So
Exactly.
yeah,
That's well put.
I guess just on the point of, so obviously we've discussed a few challenges there that kind of marketers face. I wonder if there's anything else kind of top of your mind as we, halfway through 2024, 2025 coming up, although we don't like to say that too early on in the year. Um, what other challenges face us, do you think, either in your sector or just broadly in the
Yeah.
industry of marketing? What are we coming up against, or what's going to be difficult?
Yeah, sure. Um, I think the main challenge for most marketers today, can maybe this actually predates 2024 by a few years. Maybe actually going back to my time when I was in like, right, campus, and we had really big budget to bring on new
Yeah,
tools and new tech, right? Like I think that the modern day marketer faces too much choice, right? There is so much you can add to your tool set, like
yeah,
everything from like like artificial intelligence. There was a few years ago where like we were talking about what does the like right tactile customer experience looks like. Do
yeah,
you want to do something AR, VR related, and like all this other stuff? There is so much noise out there. So, like, I think the biggest challenge for most marketers today, and for most marketing desks, right? It doesn't matter if you're like in the digital side or in the content side of things or whatever. Um, there is that need to really block the noise out
yeah,
and to really drill into what would be the biggest force multiplier. I would say that is the biggest challenge for most marketers. I think what seems to be getting better is what you mentioned about the seat at the table. For most marketers, I don't think we face that problem to as large a degree as it was a few years ago when I first got started. I think there is an understanding of what marketing brings to the table, but there is still that sense of it still being slightly disposable in some environments that are not as marketing matured.
Yeah.
So for me, just from a very zoomed out high level, as a head of marketer, um, those are those are the two things I would say that keeps me up at night the most is the right tool integration, is the right resource integration because there's way more noise now, and then the second bit
Mm.
is that constant need to validate and then revalidate marketing, right? What have you done for me lately? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe some functions don't carry that much weight still. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's invaluable really for people to really internalize and listen to. And a breath of fresh air, actually, I think, for a lot of people to hear that, because what I think so often is pushed towards people in marketing roles is almost the opposite of what you've just said. And that's really tough because I think there's a lot of pressure, like you say, on people to just almost overnight sort of become an expert in whatever the new channel software or skill is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually, all that's doing is making us thinly spread, you know, feeling
Yeah.
that imposter syndrome of being out of our depth because actually, no, we don't really understand about this thing, but we're kind of having to wear the
Yeah.
hat as if we do. And actually, to hear somebody, in a role such as yours say, actually, the skill is block out the noise and prioritize, really call into question each thing that you're putting your energy into and understand whether it is bringing value or not, because you're the best person to judge that. You're the best person to see whether that's paying off for you. And guess what? Every industry is different. Every business is going to be different. So what works over there might not work here. You have to yourself
Yeah.
quantify that. But it's really difficult because it's that swimming against the tide, isn't it? And people are keen to add the skills and add the CV notes, and it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, sure, I can. I think that that is very well put by you. I think that maybe what it also is with a lot of marketers as well. There is a trend in nature to the very discipline of marketing, right? Some of the best campaigns you've ever seen, it was born out of the fact that they maybe either did it first or they did it way better than anything before. So
Mm,
I think there is this pressure to do it first in your sector, whatever that is, right? Whatever that cool new thing is, you kind of want to do it first, whether it is like a tokenized campaign
mm,
that only lives in the digital space or
mm,
whatever else the case may be. I think that in the last few years, Kevin led, like I said, led a massive digital team when I worked in Airbus, and we had a lot of budget. You can imagine the types of budgets there where we had to rent out planes to film a plane flying in the sky. So it's crazy budget and it's crazy spend, right? But I think that given within that role, it really could really crystallize this thinking that what is the biggest force multiplier, and maybe sometimes you don't have to play that game, right? You don't have to charge over that
yeah.
hill first. You don't have to constantly live with the fear of missing out. Kind of almost take a step back, look at a business, look at a sector, still be super innovative, like I said, constantly look to sectors beyond yours, and then slowly integrate as it makes sense.
Mm,
Because the crazy bit as well is that some of those quote unquote trends tools, a bunch of them are not as trendy as they were 2 3 years ago,
no. Yeah,
right?
no. It passes fast, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's really difficult. And I think there can be such a tendency that as soon as something becomes a trend, that maybe somebody's manager mentions it or it's banded around in the office as a term and almost that pressure. I mean, I can almost feel it now. I can hear people talking about it and I'm sat there thinking, oh, I really should implement that as the marketing lead in the company. That it's a
Exactly.
nice message to send out to people. Actually, remember that you're the expert. Remember that you'll hear that noise. I love that you describe it as noise. I think that's exactly what it is. It's noise until you choose to make it into more, isn't it? So you'll hear that noise, that will always be around, but you're the expert and you know best what's working. And you need to carefully consider before you bring something else into the mix, because I always describe it like a cake, really. You've got a cake, you've got a set amount of time, and anybody does in any role. And that's, how we cut the slices is going to determine how much energy is going into each slice that we're portioning the cake up into. So if you're going to add yet more, yet more, yet more slices into your cake, the efficiency of all those things by default is going to reduce. So you've got to be more shrewd about it. But that's tough. Yeah, I think really interesting challenge there. And I think great to, yeah, really encourage marketers that it's okay to say no. It's okay to
Yeah.
to set those boundaries and say, do you know what, even it might not be no, but it might be, I'm going to be a bit more skeptical about that for now. I'm not going to take that on right now. I'm going to watch and see how that evolves in the industry, and then maybe it might be something I implement, but not right now just because it's trending. um
Exactly. Yeah.
so
Yes.
yeah.
Exactly that.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, it is a tough time. I mean, there's lots of opportunity out there and lots of things to implement, but it is tough, and can be a bit deafening. I wonder that in the next couple of years whether you think we're going to see any sort of huge shifts. I mean, this is always the time everyone brings up AI. So if you want to talk about that, I imagine that has some
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
but
Sure.
you absolutely don't have to. It's not in the notes that we send. You must mention
Yeah.
it just in terms of insights into what you think's coming over the horizon, maybe in a more positive light. What do you think marketing is going to become about more, or
Yeah.
what do you think we're all going to be prioritizing a little bit more, say 12, 24 months down the line?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I think that for me to bring up artificial intelligence, there is actually a natural link there with the very nature of what we do as a
Mm,
business because of the very close adjacency between those two things,
yeah.
um, which would also mean that I believe in the force of like artificial intelligence, right? And I would say to most marketers, you can not. This actually goes against the message I just gave, but this is not something you can bury your head in the sand.
Mm, mm,
Like
mm.
when it comes to my thing is you should educate yourself and in a lot of ways it can actually be very very complimentary. I would say amongst most of my marketing friends I would go as high as 90% of them use a form of artificial intelligence on a weekly
Yeah.
basis, whether that is just to read through copy or to just get ideas on maybe what the next webinar or what the next blog
Yeah.
series
Yeah.
might be, right? We do already use that, so I would say that is absolutely unavoidable. And I would say that that would start to shape some of the thinking of what most marketing structures are going
Mm,
to look like, right?
yeah.
Why I feel comfortable having such a bare bone team right now is that there are a lot of things that I use artificial intelligence with. Like I said, copy or some like other sort of stuff, right? So that for me will be the biggest shift. I think that we are going to continue to lean a bit more into the digital space. I'm not quite sure what the next thing will be,
Yeah.
but like I think you can bet that it would be another derivative of something we already have. So maybe
Mm,
something built off of the foundation of like blockchain, called those very core technologies that we already have.
mm,
That is something that is going to be unavoidable. And then maybe the last thing I will flag, which I have already started seeing as well, is there is greater tool integration for most
mm,
marketers. What I mean by that is that you would usually just have maybe like a CRM tool, and maybe something that does something else and something else, right? What I have started to see in the last 24 months is most of these companies are now starting to buy out each other, or to just really develop what would just be like a plug-in. They are
Yeah.
now fully developing that full function into their own tool, right? So,
Mm,
like, I see a future where we have less tools. Like, I know the average head of marketer would have like 5 to maybe 8 tools, right? I see a future where that is less.
that's reduced. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I guess it will become honed, won't it, into kind of one multi-tool or something that perfectly fits the needs of what we have at the moment. Because you're right, I think there's this bit of a gap at the moment between it all exists. People are trying to get to know how to use it, but it's clunky. We don't really understand. Or I would say the average marketer obviously is aware of it. Do they fully understand the extent at which it could help them? Do they understand how to deploy it? Not really. And I think things like that take a long time. So I guess, but I agree with you. I think that immersion and that non-avoidance of it is essential because it is inevitably going to shape the industry, and it's incredibly helpful. And I think there can be a lot of fear around it, especially from the creative side of the marketing industry as well. I think that's when it slightly becomes a difficult topic to discuss. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I know there's a lot of AI cropping up to help with that side of things, creative side, the
Yeah,
design elements, the things like that. I know that's
yeah.
evolving all the time. Do you think that's going to also continue to have more and more of a place, or do you think that's where it gets a little bit more tricky in marketing? I don't know what you think on that.
Yeah, sure. Like, I think it's hard not to paint a slightly pessimistic view,
Yeah,
especially because the crux of what we're talking about here is, like, a human application, right? So basically, we
sure.
are talking about the long-term view of, like, human labor, especially when it comes to marketing. I think that my view is that the technology will only get better. Can Like, I think that the technology will only be able to do more. It's not quite there yet, right? It's not quite there to a point where, with me as a head of marketer, I can say that, oh, I don't need to work with like an agency,
Yeah.
so like I don't need a graphic designer. We're not quite there yet, but we can see where that is going. Right, we are
Mm,
going to get to a point where some tasks we could easily automate that. What that tells me is that we as marketers, which is the very backbone of like our discipline, we need to stay abreast of trend. Like, again, right, what I said a few minutes ago still like applies. You don't need to jump at the first thing right out the door, right?
yeah,
But you
every
need
ad
to,
on on
yeah,
the feed,
right.
yeah.
Exactly, but like, you really need to educate yourself as far as artificial intelligence is concerned.
Mm,
Can You need to readapt what your proficiencies are,
mm,
as you read the tea leaves with like, greater education. So
mm,
for me as a head of marketing, there is a very, very humanistic view of what I do that I don't believe will ever, well, not at least in the next 5, 10 years, that would ever be fully automated, right? There
mm,
is this need to still be on ground and to really capture the soul of the business, right? You
yeah.
really need to capture the soul and the spirit of the place. You then need to readapt that into all these different activations. I don't think we're quite there yet where you can just fully delegate that to an artificial intelligence system.
Mm,
Yeah, maybe there's nothing to worry about just yet, but we kind of need to keep on evolving our CVs as well as how we are positioning ourselves.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you for that. Really appreciate you sharing. And I think, I really agree with you there. I think the term I like to use is the senior marketing lead in any team is really the guardian for the brand, and you kind of
Mm,
describe bringing the soul and bringing the spirit, and it's looking after it, really, isn't it? It's making sure that
mm.
whatever we let in the gates, whatever we let out the gates, we are protecting the brand. And yeah, to me, that's, at least for the foreseeable, going to be a human role.
Yeah,
But no reason why the tools available can't help us do that more efficiently, with more
exactly. Yeah,
research, with more data, with more options, with more ideas. Why would we not use that? So
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, it's part of the fun just to watch it all evolve and see what the world does look like in 12
yeah,
months, 24 months. Like, who knows, what we could be talking about on a podcast then.
yeah,
But yeah, and crazy to
yeah.
think how far we've come. If you think 12, 24 months prior, if we'd have talked about some
Mm,
of the things that now are available and now are commonly used in teams,
mm.
also quite mind blowing. So the pace at which it moves is fast. So no wonder it can be a bit overwhelming working in marketing sometimes for people.
It is
Um,
indeed. Yeah, yeah,
but yeah, well, no, that, I mean, really, really interesting, and I think there's a lot to be excited about there. I
yes.
wonder, just kind of bringing it back to you and your practice, and
Mm,
when you're opening up your laptop on a Monday morning, and you're kind of looking at what you're prioritizing
mm.
within the company, what are you setting as your kind of key intention for marketing? And whether that's, getting into a new channel, or a new kind of strategic approach, or, something that actually you haven't really focused on previously, but now you're thinking, "Do you know what? More and more, this is coming to the top of my mind every time I'm looking at the way forward." I don't know if,
Yeah,
you have something in
yeah,
mind
sure.
there.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, right. Looking at my current role, that has changed in the last 2, 3 weeks. So, I would say for my first 6 months, it was all about branding, right? It was all about landing that foundational cornerstone, which is what I kind
Yeah.
of like, described it as, which was what really consumed me. But now that that has been done, is now the question of so what, and like, what next. And for me, I'm spending most of my time really trying to navigate, like again, what I consider to be a very, very unformed sector.
Mm,
There is still a lot of youthful there is still a lot of youthful energy to the sector, right? So
yeah.
for me, the things that are now consuming me is, number one, is to really establish what like our own channels are going to look like, right? And to maybe diversify from, like, relying on the things we don't control. So, like, things like really trying to create own content churn, whether that's our technical blog, vlogs. We've got a series of roundtables, and kind of like, by the way, we do have a lot to talk about. We
Yeah.
have a lot to communicate. So for me, is the constant extractions of those core technical truths, and like
Mm,
really trying to, like, present that externally, because it sits like under like our tone of voice as well, which is
mm,
all part of the branding job. So yeah, that is what my focus has been: is not taking the easy way out and really building, like, our own vehicles and like our own channels. That's the
mm.
next phase for me. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
what's taking
interesting.
most of my time right now. Can we have a lot of cool like ideas, and we have a lot of cool things
Mm,
that is just about to drop in the next few days, weeks, months. Yeah, we
great.
have a lot of cool stuff planned. Yeah,
Yeah, it
for
sounds like so much kind of momentum and dynamism within your team, which is so exciting. And that's where we all kind of dream to work and be in a team like that, where things are happening all the time, going live, new ideas, and that's really, yeah, an exciting place to be. I love what you're saying there about that idea that as marketers we've got to continue asking ourselves the questions. Often we'll sort of, I think a common issue can be when we're sort of waiting until those around us ask the questions, when actually we should be putting our own ideas under scrutiny. So what? So what? Why is
Yeah.
this important? Is that what I should be focusing my energy on? And I think that having that internal reflection, and just sitting and thinking as well. I think, it's a fast-paced industry. There's a lot to be said for just having a moment to just zoom out from it all and just look at everything you're doing and really thinking, is any of that having an impact? Is all of it? Why am I doing that? We've done that since 2019, 2020. The world's changed a lot since then. Why are we still doing it? And really putting everything's got to earn its seat at the table, as we kind of
Yes.
mentioned already. But that, yeah, very, very
Yeah.
interesting, and glad that you've got the project out the way. And once again, congrats on that, because I know how much of a undertaking that is, and how many
Sure.
moving parts there are. So yeah, it must feel
Yeah.
like a huge relief.
Exactly, Ken. Like I would say that the second bit to that would be that there is still the need to continually educate the folks here too.
Yeah.
Because like I said, right, just because the brand has landed and is tangible, and if you like all the tangible pieces have like landed, there is still that continual task as the first senior marketing hire to still actually continually take them along the journey, right?
Yeah.
Because by the very nature of maybe what we do, can maybe this is not just a marketing thing. There is that constant selling on the future. It's like, wait till I do this amazing podcast and it's going to do X, Y, Z. Just like, trust me,
Yeah.
believe me,
This
this is
will be the
coming and this is
moment. Yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
there is still that constant need to, take them along the journey and to sell the
Mm,
vision. And maybe there's sometimes where you kind of have to pull like the rubber band back to go forward. So,
mm,
right now, the branding is launched, but we're actually spending quite a lot of time just actually creating stuff. It feels
mm,
like nothing is being done, but there's still that constant need as well to actually spend a lot of like energy really trying to carry senior stakeholders along on the journey, and maybe the whole company as well, because I do get to do that as well, where you get to brief, right? So it's just really continually like educating. That would be that would be the 50% of what I do most as well.
mm, mm. Sounds really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, it sounds really interesting, and such a um kind of long-term approach to a really great marketing strategy with a great foundation. You're not just looking for a quick win, you're looking at how can we build a really, really solid house, starting with some
Yeah.
really, really great bricks that's going to last us a really long time. So, yeah, I love that. Thank you for
Exactly.
sharing all of that. It's really interesting to hear what's going on your to-do list in your world when you open your laptop. And that's always what I find fascinating about these conversations.
Yeah.
Everyone's different, everyone's focusing on something slightly different, but it's great to hear
Yeah.
what those things are. um Slightly wild card question then to finish off.
Sure.
um we've talked a lot about marketing. Obviously, that's everything that we love. But if
Yeah.
marketing hadn't been the thing that you'd gone into, where do you think you may have gone in life? What do you
Oh,
think you had always dreamed of being, or where do you think you might have ended up?
yeah. Yeah, that is actually a very, very easy question. So, which is what I still do today. Like, I haven't stopped writing in my spare time. So,
Okay,
I still do a lot of nonfiction writing. So, prose, poetry, as well as just like, longer form, like, pieces as well. So maybe it would have been a combination of that, and maybe what is a dying field will maybe be like a travel blogger, right? Because you get to
okay,
go to
yeah,
all
yeah.
this fantastic places, which I love to do. I love to travel. I love experiencing new cultures, the food, the language. That's why I took the chance to move to France for a few years
Yes,
for
of
like work.
course.
Yeah, it would be something along those lines. Maybe a travel blogger slash vlogger.
Okay. Love it, love it. Well, who
Would
knows
be
what the future
it.
holds? I mean, we'll keep
Yeah,
an
right.
eye out. I mean, it's
Yeah.
very appealing, isn't it? And ever more possible these days with nomadic working and everything like that. But yes, I myself had a travel blog back in the days. I know we talked about living in
Ah,
France and
cool.
everything like that, and it's a fun thing to do. But it's upkeep. It's you've really got to have that creativity flowing all the time and fit in the writing and the creativity amongst the travel and everything you're doing. So it's a tough one, but very fun.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Well, Kanyin, thanks so much for speaking to us today. I think it's been so interesting to get inside your mind and literally understand, what's inside marketing in your organization. So thank you for sharing everything. Hopefully, our listeners have really, I'm sure, taken some nuggets away there that they can implement back in. And
Yeah.
yeah, delight to have you on and lovely to meet you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very, very much. This has been a absolute pleasure as well. And yeah, it has been really nice speaking to you. Much, much
Yeah,
appreciated.
likewise. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day and speak soon.
You too. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye bye.